that I shouldn't be saying. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the beginning of the Environmental Action Civics, actually I should say Environmental Applied Civics Week, or EAC Week as we call it at Earth Force. Every year it's been our annual celebration of young people and the contributions they're making to solving environmental problems, and the educators, and really just an information base for people about environmental action civics for those who might want to do it. But this year is a special year. So on the announcement time, I have some folks with me because this year we're announcing more than just what young people and the great projects that they have done. We're also announcing a change in Earth Force. We're changing what we look like and what we do. And so I've invited a couple of my favorite board members on with me to talk about that change. So I wanted to introduce you to Tony Silva, who is our vice chair at Earth Force and been with us 3 or 4 years now. And Matt Smith, who is our treasurer, and has been with us for quite a while. And between the three of us, we are going to talk about what's going on with Earth Force and what changes we're making. And as we start, I really want to start, Tony, with you, because you came to us in an interesting way. You actually volunteered with a class of young people, a couple of classes of young people, and got to see the inner workings of what they were doing. So I'd love to have you tell the folks about that story.
Yeah, happy to tell that story. And thank you, Vince. I did. I worked with, I started volunteering and was immediately in a classroom. I hadn't been in a middle school classroom in years. And, you know, the energy was immediate, engaged, alive, you know, energetic. I arrived thinking I was there to help them sharpen their presentation skills because they were working on their presentations that then would get advanced. And that's what they were rehearsing when I was there. And you know, from the very first slide, from the very first team, it became very clear to me that this was not a typical classroom exercise. These students' voices were in everything. It was in their perspectives, it was their own perspectives, it was their own convictions. And the educator was present and was holding the space as she needed to, but she wasn't running the show. Everybody supported each other, their confidence came through because they had all done the work. And so I was going in there as a communications professional thinking I'm going to help these kids with their presentation. And then it was me who had to make a shift. I wasn't focused so much anymore on how they were presenting. I was more struck by what they were presenting. And what stood out to me is, you know, these were a group of students who had discovered mold in their classroom. A mushroom had come up, and they were tackling this issue to see what they could do to improve the environmental quality of their classrooms in the school. And so their grasp of mold, their grasp of policy and how to speak to people in power, because ultimately they went to Richmond and spoke to legislators, was very real. And also these weren't hypothetical skills. Like I said, they went to Richmond, they presented to legislators, and that led to a number of changes throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia in terms of indoor air quality and environmental quality in the schools. And what hit me was this wasn't accidental. There was a real purpose behind it. There was a teacher who knew how to, again, hold the conditions for the work that needed to get done. But behind her and supporting her was this methodology and an organization that gave her the tools to do it.
You know, that story always blows me away. Like every time, first they find a mushroom growing out of the wall in their school, right? Exactly. What do you do with that? And then second, it ends up with them changing the laws around indoor air quality for the state of Virginia forever. That story is always going to be one of my favorites and one of the most amazing. So I knew the teacher, and she sent me a picture of this mushroom growing out of the wall, and I was like, that's got to be fake. You know, that can't be real. So real. Yeah, it was totally crazy. So Matt, Tony kind of left us thinking about what we think of as Earth Force is changing the norm of education to some extent. And so as you sit as a board member and we're facing these, or we're going through these changes that we're going through. How does that new brand work in your mind? What's this new shift that we've become?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a board member, it's something we talk about a lot, right? Where have we been? Where are we? And where are we headed? And I think Tony really got us to this kind of core question that has been guiding us in determining where we're headed and where we are right about now. And that question is, what would it take to make this the standard, not the exception, right? This work we've been doing for 30 years now. I mean, our role's been very clear over these past 30 years, right? Train educators, support organizations, deliver just a really good program. And then year after year, figure out how to expand those numbers and impact. And that work has built something really real. I mean, it's had a real impact. Just to put some numbers to it, it's 250 plus organizations across 31 states, up to like 80,000 students a year. I mean, really impressive what the organization has done. But as we look forward, this idea of, well, how do we institutionalize this work? How do we make this standard is something that we've been thinking about quite a bit. And we really don't feel like we can answer that question by training one more educator or running one more program. We want to think bigger. We want to change the systems, the districts, the funders, the field infrastructure, if you will, that really determine how young people learn. And so that's what Earth Force is taking on at this point, right? That's what we're going to do differently. It's about building the alliance that really connects and strengthens the organizations that have adopted this practice and are interested in continuing to push this practice. That means working directly inside school districts to really embed this methodology into the foundation, right? The curriculum and professional development. So it's about bringing the stakeholders together, the funders, the field leaders that really need to all be co-builders of this work, who all need to kind of lean in and not just be supporters, but really champion this themselves. And this is different than the actions that we took 5 years ago. It's not a new way of talking about what we do, but really a fundamentally different level of execution. And so the board looked at that and said, yes, that's what we need to do, not because it's safe or because it's easy. We've certainly come to terms with the fact that it is a significant evolution. But as a board, as an organization, we believe that it's the right answer to the right question that that Tony got us to here, amongst the board, amongst the organization some time ago. And so, as a strategic shift warrants kind of a broader thinking about how Earth Force symbolizes its mission. And as such, the organization is excited to launch its new logo. And now that we have the logo right in front of us, I can speak to kind of the breaking down the pieces of this logo, right? How did we come up with this? How did this really come to fruition? And it really starts with, what is Earth Force, right? The centerpiece is a tree. The tree is kind of the very straightforward. It's the earth in Earth Force. It represents learning. It's grounded in place. It's rooted in the real local problems that students actually live with, like a mushroom growing in their classroom. It's not about abstract environmental concepts. It's real. It's the creek behind the school, the mold in the classroom. And that's what this work is built on. And then, up from there, you see the figures reaching upward. And all of those around the tree, that's the force, right? There's the earth and the force that kind of comes together. And they represent more than just students in a classroom. And it's all the stakeholders that are kind of coming together here. They're the educators, the organizations, the districts, and the communities that carry this practice, right? It's not just within the school. It's about broad community impact. So it's really, what we think that symbolizes is people building something together, larger than any single program, right? That's kind of this evolution, institutionalization and expanding, but making it a part of the foundation. The reach is upward. The reach is toward systems change, towards the infrastructure that makes this work permanent rather than dependent on the next grant cycle or the next committed teacher. So you put this all together and you have an organization that is rooted in community and reaching toward systems change. And I think that's exactly where Earth Force is headed. And finally, we feel like the logo says that pretty clearly. Vince, do you want to talk a little bit more about what that looks like in practice?
Yeah, so thank you, Matt, and that is such a great explanation of that logo. And I want to thank you both for all the time you've spent being involved in this change and update of the work. And for those of you that don't know, the logo process has taken us a couple of years, and we really had to, as Matt said, get a grip on who we were and what we were trying to change. So in practice, I think, Matt, you've done a pretty good job of outlining what that means. A lot of our work is shifting from being very good at helping educators get through this process to taking what we've learned there and helping develop systems so that educators can go through this fully evolved environmental, what we used to call action civics process, and to take that out so that entire systems can move in that way. And I should mention this. I mentioned it a little bit at the top, and I hesitated there on it as well, which is that we're also shifting the name. What we have called environmental action civics, which has stood for young people being active and engaged and really taking part in changing their communities, that action piece. We're shifting the name to environmental applied civics, which is more about systems. It's more about changing the world around you. It's more about embedding ourselves into school systems. And so that's, I think, an important distinction for us as we make this what is, as Matt said, neither an easy nor the simplest change we made, but I think an incredibly profound and important one that we're going to make. And so in addition to working with school districts to embed it, we are bringing together groups of people like organizations that are interested in climate resilience education, organizations that are interested in district integration, and we're having conversations about what that might look like and how that work would happen and what is the best way to do it, and forming coalitions where that makes sense to bring other people together so that our combined work can be more powerful than the work that we do individually. And so just to close us off here, so that we finish up in our 15 minutes of allotted time, I wanted to ask you both about, from your perspective as members of the board who've been with us for a number of years, whether that is as volunteers or as board members, what do you think this commitment from your point of view is that we're making? And Tony, we'll start off with you.
Sure. I think what we're committing to is keeping the work real. As I said about my student and classroom experience, was the youth voice, young people in the room with decision makers, adults who know how to support that effort without taking it over. That doesn't change how we grow. I think that is growth. And so that's how I would summarize the commitment.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of twofold. I think the goal is in part scale, but the only way to really have effective scale is to focus on quality first. So it's all about making sure that the interactions with educators and districts really have an impact and are built on a sound foundation of quality. And then from there, we think the scaled up version of that, really the sky's the limit. It's 80,000 students a year, we think is really not the ceiling. It's actually probably the floor, but it's about getting it right. It's about starting with the right quality in the foundation.
Yeah, I think on the staff side, I would raise up something that you said earlier, Matt, which is that it's about learning with people, not not being the sage in the room as it works. That's our motto in working with young people, but it's this co-developing, co-learning, sharing among people that I think will really make a huge difference. So I want to thank you both for joining us this morning. This has been it's been really fun to hear from you and get to have the chance to talk about this. For those of you that are listening and are interested in some way in getting engaged, there's a couple of things that you can do. If you're a school district or someone that works at a school district and you're interested, then on our website, there is a place that you can go and just say, click on that you want to ask for a consultation, and we'll reach out and we'll start to talk to each other and assess where we are. If you're an organization that does work similar to ours or akin to this, there's a place there that you can, a contact form where you can reach out and just say, hi, and this is what I do and how we want to do it. We run courses 2 or 3 times a year, depending on the desire. And so we get a lot of people in that way. And if you're a funding organization and you're wondering about what kind of education is great to support that can actually move people from understanding environmental issues to making change in their communities, we're happy to talk to you about what we've learned as well. We have a wealth of information and knowledge, and we're all about sharing that as much as possible. And so feel free to reach out to me or contact. And finally, if you are listening to this and you feel moved by what we do, which I hope you do, just join us there at earthforce.org/donate. And you can make a donation to the change, or you can use the QR code that is in the upper left-hand side of your window. And I think that's everything. Thanks, guys. This was really great.
Thank you. This was great.
Bye.